This video is designed to help you understand the distance formula and how to use it. The distance formula is basically d for distance equals the square root of x2 minus x1 quantity squared plus y squared minus y1 quantity squared. So to find the distance between 2 points of x1, y1 and x2, y2, we would simply substitute our points into the above formula and complete the calculations using order of operations. First, I'm going to talk about where it comes from. This may help some of you memorize it. It comes from the Pythagorean theorem, which is used for finding sides of a right triangle as seen below on the right. So for example here, I have a right triangle with sides 3 and 4 and a missing side question mark. So the Pythagorean theorem, which is a squared plus b squared equals c squared, when a and b are the legs of your right triangle and c is your hypotenuse. So in this particular example, you can see that I have 3 and 4 are the legs of my right triangle. To find the length of the hypotenuse, which is, or the distance between its two endpoints, let's go ahead and plug in those numbers for a and b, 3 squared plus 4 squared, and that's going to equal our hypotenuse squared, or c squared. So 3 squared is 9, 4 squared is 16. So 9 plus 16 is 25, and 25 is c squared. Take the square root of both sides, and we get that c is equal to 5. So the length of the hypotenuse is 5. Now, to help you understand that a little bit more, let's look at the connection by putting it onto a coordinate graph. Taking the same triangle with the same lengths, and over here on the side you can see that this endpoint at the top is 0, 3, and this endpoint down here is 4, 0. So I'm going to use those numbers and put them into the distance formula to show that I'm still going to get the same answer. So the first thing I did was I took the points. I took my x point of 0 minus the x point of 4. Then I took my y point of 3 minus my y point of 0. So I started with the first point on the top, subtracted the second point. I'm simply going to follow through with the order of operations. 0 minus 4 is negative 4. 3 minus 0 is 3. When you square negative 4, you get 16. 3 squared is 9. We're going to add these two together. We get d is equal to the square root of 25, which gives us the distance d of 5. So that side is 5. So let's actually go through and use the formula and try to find the distance between the 2 points 1, 5 and 2, 6. So I'm going to start here with d is equal to my square root sign. I'm going to take the difference in x values, so I'm going to start with the point 1 and subtract the x value of the other number, which is 2, and that is squared. I'm going to add to that the difference between the y values. So since I started with 1, I'm going to start with 5, same point, minus, whoops, not a comma, minus 6. Ignore that. And that's going to be squared. So now I'm going to continue. Again, following order of operations, I do the parentheses first. 1 minus 2 is negative 1, and that will be squared, plus 5 minus 6 is negative 1, quantity squared. Continuing my order of operations, negative 1 squared is 1, negative 1 squared is 1. So I'm left with that the distance is equal to the square root 2. And unless the problem specifically tells you to round a particular answer off, you want to leave it in radical form, so the answer would simply be square root 2. Now, something to keep in mind is that because this is addition in between those two parentheses, if I had decided to put the y's first, like this, and said, okay, the difference in y's, I'm going to do those first, 5 minus 6, square it, plus 1 minus 2, and put the x's in the second half, for example, note that you're going to get the exact same answer. So 5 minus 6 is negative 1. 1 minus 2, negative 1 squared. So we end up with the exact same problem. So because, again, it's addition in the middle, if you suddenly do the difference in y's first plus the difference in x's, you will still get the same answer. So don't get too hung up on that part. Here's a sample problem that utilizes the distance formula in a slightly different manner. The question says, a triangle is equilateral if it has three equal sides. And this triangle clearly does. The bottom triangle here is x plus x, or 2x. This side is 2x, and that side is 2x. So it's equilateral, and I want to find the ratio of the height, which is this in between here, here's my height, to one of the three sides, or to 2x. So to do this, I'm going to go ahead and use Pythagorean theorem, since it is a right triangle, to find this missing h. So what that does is it gives me a base number, or leg base, x, and another leg base, h, equal to my hypotenuse of 2 squared. So I'm going to write h squared plus x squared equals 2x, quantity squared. I'm going to keep following the problem. So 2x squared is 4x squared. I'm going to subtract x squared from both sides. Those are like terms. So my missing height squared is equal to 3x squared. So take the square root of both sides. I get my height is equal to the square root of 3. Now you'll notice x squared is a perfect square, so the square root of x squared is x. So to make things easier to see, you tend to want to put the x out in the front of the square root 3. Otherwise it might look like you're writing square root 3x if you're not very careful with how you write your square root sign. So now I have this height here, x square root 3. So the ratio of that height to a side is x square root 3 over the side of 2x. Now I need to simplify by reducing my x's, and I get the square root of 3 over 2.